link for this for, I think that's what Tawana was looking for.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can do that on the back end.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, so I just sent it to her, so hopefully.
You're not a jinx, George. Oh, thank you, Maria. I was kind of in and out, working. Lots of things going on in the back end, so that's usually where I do the best work.
Is on the back end.
I'm a back end.
We know you. We know you've been working hard on the back end and the front end. I will say we are working feverishly to get our website back up, but our web designer needs a little bit more time. So please be patient with us, and we promise that when she has it all together, we will let everybody know. So we promise to do that. So our discussion tonight is going to be based on an article by Camari Ellis. Camari is one of our 10K members, and I wish I could have snagged him for this because it would have been great, but I only had, like I said, 2-hour lead time, and I spent like an hour and a half thinking, oh my goodness, what are we going to talk about? And I'm looking around and trying to think of something that would match tonight's title. Because I'm not a personal finance expert per se. So all of a sudden I remembered this video that Camari did 5 years ago. The audio was not so great on it, but it turns out he did a corresponding article with it that he placed on Medium. Shout out to YouTube, and he had it in his description. So I said, perfect. So we're going to talk about that article, based on what Camari suggested. So we are going to.
No, ma'am. Unfortunately, Miss Felicia, our scheduled speaker got caught out of town, so she is unable to be with us this evening.
Yeah, we were really looking forward to having her, and she is going to reschedule. She told me that she's going to reschedule. So you all know how these things are, though. It just sometimes happens that way. So okay, I'm not seeing us on any of our other platforms right now, but that's not true. I see us here. We're going to get started. Just give me 1 second to make sure that I share it to the other groups here. And yeah, and we're going to get started. Okay, so I want to, first of all, ask everyone, put your city and state in the chat so we can welcome you here. So we've got Oklahoma, we've got Atlanta, West Palm Beach, St. Louis in the house, Pensacola, Nashville, Madera, New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans, born and raised. Philly, Texas, Memphis, DC, Oklahoma, Alabama. Sandrine, good evening, ladies. And we will roll with the punches. Yeah, look, that's all we can do is just roll with the punches. So you always give good info. Thank you so much, Maria. You have to register first. Oh, I guess for this, yes. I feel like I'm jinxing. Oh no, George. That's what Talisha was saying. No, you're not jinxing. It just, sometimes it happens that way. So yeah, so for everyone that just came on, the scheduled speaker was caught out of town and she could not get back in time. So she is going to reschedule with us. But in the meantime, we have an article that we're going to go over by fellow member Camari Ellis. And the only reason I didn't pull him in was because I only had like 2 hours notice and I only came up with this topic like a half hour ago. So I barely had time to highlight the article. So I'm so glad that my partner in crime here, Talisha, is here, and I know that Tawana is trying to get on as well. So we've got Chicago, we've got California, Pennsylvania, Illinois, New Jersey, Richmond, DC. So happy to have everyone here tonight. So this should be a good conversation tonight with regards to this article that we have. So welcome, Tawana.
Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hello. I don't know if you heard, but we are going to do an article tonight by Camari Ellis because we don't have our speaker here tonight, but yes. I did want to at least just introduce the 10K Project for those of you who are new, who are not familiar with who we are. The 10K Project is a community of individuals who are looking to help build the Black economy from the ground up. We often hear about top-down stuff, legislation that could be passed, wealth that could be transferred, but what can we do from the ground up? That's what we're always here to talk about. And we do it from a few points of view, increasing income, increasing our assets, starting businesses, and generational wealth. So this is a public presentation for this evening. So anyone is welcome to come. So if you have a family member, friend, whomever, feel free to send them the link. At 7:30, we're having a members only session, and it is about building an emerging tech portfolio. And that speaker did confirm with me earlier today. So she should definitely be here. Barbara Bickham is coming to talk with us at 7:30 tonight. And we have a full calendar of events. So if you are not on our email list yet, you want to get on our email list. Usually I say go to the10kproject.com to sign up. However, today I'm just going to ask you to send me an email, info@the10kproject.com. If you're not on our email list, I'll make sure you get on the email list. And yeah, so that is it. So ladies, are we ready for?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's talk.
All right. Let's see.
Gotta get Camari here live also, because he's such an amazing guy.
We're gonna get him here definitely. I wish that he was able to come, but I just didn't have enough time to ask him. So is that big enough, or should I try to make it bigger?
A little bigger,
please.
Let's see here. Let's see here. I can make it bigger. Does that work?
That's perfect.
All righty then. So this is the Guide to Black Wealth. And the conversation tonight was really supposed to be about personal finance to close the wealth gap. And I thought that Camari did a great job of outlining some actionable things that we can do. I also want to say that this is a give and take. I'm not an expert, neither Talisha or Tawana are experts. None of us up here are certified financial planners or anything like that. So if you out there, if you have good information, actionable tips, things that you're doing within your family, feel free to put them in the chat. Do Q&A as well. Ask us questions, because this is about us masterminding and learning from each other. So in it, he says, I'm going to read the whole article here, even though I have certain things highlighted. So Black wealth, or the lack thereof, is a very popular topic these days. Google Black wealth and your results will return tons of articles and research showing the widening wealth gap between Blacks and whites in the United States. Recently, the Huffington Post reported on a Pew Research report that stated white household median worth was $141,000, and that Black household median worth was a mere $11,000. Now, this is a 5-year-old article, so we know that the numbers are slightly different now, okay? But Camari goes, that's a pretty big gap. Typically, I hate these surveys because they are purely academic in nature, and the people reporting usually are not professional advisors working with real people and their money. I usually hate these articles because the headlines are guilty of race baiting, in my opinion, and rarely provide any solutions. Every time I see articles like these, I wonder, where are the Black accountants, the Black investment advisors, the Black lawyers, and the Black financial advisors on this issue? For me personally, I know I try my best to avoid these topics in the open public in fear of being labeled the angry Black guy. Maybe that is why other Black money professionals don't speak out. It's hard to drop that label, even if it is inaccurately attached to you. For me, that stops today. If folks label me that, then so be it. But it will not be because I am race baiting. Rather, I am presenting the facts and some insight from my experience as an advisor who is Black and gives advice to his clients of multiple ethnic groups on money matters. Many of the problems found in the state of Black America are directly attributed to a lack of funding. Ironically, Black unemployment has been double that of the national average for over 50 years. It is almost impossible for a poor or middle-class person to obtain wealth without a good source of income. The link between income and wealth cannot be ignored. If high unemployment rates are a chronic issue, creating wealth is going to be an ongoing challenge. This clearly highlights a systemic issue that has not been addressed. If history is a teacher, then this issue will persist until a paradigm shift occurs. So I want to stop there and take these 3 paragraphs here, where he starts off asking, where are the Black accountants, investment advisors, lawyers, Black financial advisors? And then he starts talking with regards to labeling. Do we have a problem with our Black professionals speaking out? Or has anyone heard of these labels and people being concerned about speaking out about money issues within the community because of some of the labels that we, some people may get because of it? And I'll throw it out to Tawan and Talisha as well.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I think part of the problem is we're not telling our own story, right? So we're depending on other people to tell the story, and they tell it from their perspective, and they get to frame it however they want to, which is where the race baiting comes in. When we tell our own story, we tell it from an organic, authentic place, and that's not happening. So what needs to happen is we have to start speaking about who we are, so that's the narrative that gets out there for everyone to see. Then we can tell the story truthfully. We don't have to worry about the labels of being, angry Black woman. I know we've all been heard that. I mean, I've heard that. And you do almost have to just resign yourself to owning it, right? If my personality type and my outspokenness makes you think I'm angry, even though I say it with a smile, then you're the problem here, not me. So we almost have to change that also and stop owning what the labels are that people give us. And we've done that for we're lazy, we're this, we can't work together. All of those foolish things that we've heard, we start believing it because we hear it so much. We have to start changing that narrative and tell our own story.
Even from the opposite side, the paradox comes into, if you're educated within that system, they think that you're, not doing it right. Like you already have something bent against you because you're proficient in a system that wasn't built for you. So it's almost like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you say these are the rules, they're like, well, you're just trying to do what the white man does. Or, or if you say, okay, let's do it this way. Are you sure? Because it's not done that way. So you're on each side, you're never given the credibility of this is what I know. This is how I'm instituting this information. And I'm trying to give it to you from a sensibility that is relatable. And you just miss that whole part because you're either, you're polarized to say yes or no. And that middle ground, which is where the truth lies in, it's like, this is it. And these are the things that you need to do them like this in order to, maximize them or optimize them. People will always be suspect. And we're the conspiracy theorists of the world. And that's what happens. You never let somebody just be. You need to that's what the labeling and all of that. It's like, if this person is proficient, let that proficiency guide you with regard to the information they're bestowing upon you.
Is it, so I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in here, actually. Is it fair, though, for us to take the rules that are given by the greater society and just lay them at a Black person's feet and say, if only you get more education, then you would get yourself out of the wealth trap. If only you did these things, because there's a lot of pushback with that. People will say, we've tried to do certain things and we still are, the rules still don't apply to us evenly as they do to other people. Or you go and you get like a master's degree, but then you're $100,000 in debt or $80,000 in debt. And yeah, you may choose to go into biology or something like that. Let's just take, you didn't go for a sociology degree. No offense to any of the sociologists out there, but you went for something that like a lawyer, for example, but you still are not making enough money to cover the student loan costs as well as getting a house and things like that. Because we often hear about telling our story, but I think one of the issues with some of the pushback is that sometimes it's not layered with some of the unique challenges that our people tend to have.
Well, there's always caveats. And I think that's, again, where the perspective comes in. You're looking for a professional that only knows the rules, but also know how those rules actually apply to you and how they apply to you. So again, you're looking at for, an individual to be able to not only just say, okay, these are the things, and this is how this may affect you, and have a broad wealth of information with regard to that, instead of just saying, well, you just should have done this. You don't want to be should on everywhere you go. It's like, you should have did this, you should have did that. Well, we can't do that. Sometimes it's not feasible. Sometimes it's not applicable. And you need a person who has that relativity. And I think that's where we also don't invest in those people either. You feel like there's already some ding. And I think this is, again, our own, we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot. We always want something else, but then we don't like the information we're given because it's not relatable to us. But you chose that person on purpose to give you and disseminate that information, knowing that it wasn't going to be applicable. So it's like you create a cycle of disbelief in your own self. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to pay for this person to give me this information, but it didn't do anything for me. It's like, well, really, was that person really the person you wanted? Or did they just not give you the information that you wanted to hear? You have to really be, ascertain the quality and the viability of the information given to you.
Well, the other part of this too is the target keeps moving, right? So, get an education and you'll close the wealth gap and opportunity will open at your feet, like the earth opening up saying, here I am, get $1 million. It's not real, because as soon as you then do that, right, the target moves, and then you need something else. And then you need connections. You got to know people. Well, I just spent all the time in school. I don't really know, like what, I didn't know I was supposed to be networking out. It's like the rules keep changing because the masses don't want us to hit the target. And so I think for me, what it's taken me a very, very long time to learn, unfortunately, and hopefully the young people out there will learn this a lot faster, is we have to create the target, right? We have to stop acting on other people's rules, make our own rules, make our own target. And then that way we can't keep getting tricked, right? And can't keep being moved on. It's like, you're at the shooting range and, you think you're getting ready to hit it, but you didn't realize they moved it back further and further and further. And that keeps happening over and over again. We have the professionals are out there. The lawyers are out there. The doctors are out there. And guess what? Many of them are in debt, right? Practicing for years and years and still in debt from the school loans, never making, the millions they thought they were making, still sitting at 6 figures with people who don't have degrees, who are not doctors and lawyers. And so we just have to figure out what life really looks like for us and start setting our own rules. And I know that's hard to do because we live in a society where we are the minority, but it's possible. I mean, we see it happening.
Yeah. So one of the other things that Tawana hit on and this article talked about was the angry Black guy or the angry Black woman. And we hear this, I hear the angry Black woman often. One of the things that I will say is out of emotion comes action. Nobody ever moved forward and did massive action from being satisfied, in my opinion. If somebody has an example of someone who did, then, definitely put that in the chat. I don't know of anybody who created something a massive action, especially when it comes to our community. For example, civil rights wasn't fought for all of those years because we were complacent and happy, right? So owning the label, I think we have to be okay with owning the label, and we have to be okay with owning, not necessarily angry, whatever label you are given within your family, within your community, within society at large, you have to be okay with that. So for example, Jeff Bezos, who is the CEO of Amazon, doesn't run around caring about any labels people are giving to him. Jeff Bezos made what doubled his net worth during COVID-19. He doesn't care. And I do think that there's something to getting to a point where you're okay with whatever label, as long as it's an ethical label, right? Like if somebody would call me a thief, I'd say, no, I'm not a thief. Like that's not a correct label, and it's not an ethical label. But other than that, who cares what people think?
And none of them are ethical labels at the end of the day, right? Because they
well, if they're true,
slanderous.
They could be true. So
well,
it would depend.
Could be true, but we're talking about the stereotypical labels that
Yes.
are typically, not factual, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting because we say you have to not care, but we live in a society where everyone wants to be accepted, right? And you want people, typically people want to be liked, right? Or want to be respected. You have to find that balance between not caring about that stereotype and really letting your true character shine. Because it's for every person that sees the label, there are twice as many people who see the real you. I'd like to believe that, right? And to focus on those people. And then I also would say, what I wish I would have done early in my career, when you hear those ignorant labels, correct them. Let them know that that's not what they're experiencing. I think sometimes we kind of grin, especially when you're young in your career, you kind of grin and kind of, or no, I'm not being, and try to justify it. I think it's okay for us to say, no, that's not what you're experiencing. What you're experiencing is someone who has an opinion, right? And you say it with a smile, and you say it with joy in your heart, and you say it with politeness and professionalism. And hopefully they get that it's not okay to do those little microaggressions that we've allowed to happen year over year over year, generation over generation.
So I'm going to push back a little bit and say, even if they continue to do the microaggressions, you can't let that stop you or deter you from whatever your goal is.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. So, because some people will say, oh, I had no idea that that's what I was doing. And they make an effort, and then others won't, Rebecca has a question here. How do you set your targets / rules? Any practical example? So, I just kind of focus on, I like to do a top 3 list. Like, what are the top 3 things that I want to work on within my personal finance, for example, or within my business? So one of the things that I want to do is I want to be debt-free, completely debt-free by the time I'm 60. And the reason for that is because I saw both of my parents, my mother and my father. When my father retired, he was completely debt-free and he owned his house. And I saw the difference that it made in his retirement. So that is a practical example that I'm following. And let me tell you, it's not hard. I mean, it's not easy, sorry. It's not easy to say I'm going to do that because I have 15 years left, but it is something that, that is a target for me. I think your target needs to be based on what you want for your life,
Yeah, it's such a personal decision. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a personal decision.
Yeah. And some great chats in here as well, some great comments in the chat. So we'll definitely come back to some of those. The other thing that they said, or that Camari said in here, is it is impossible to obtain wealth without a good source of income. And I would say not only a good source of income, a steady source of income. If you have anxiety about where your next check is coming from, if you're going to be laid off in the next 6 months, If you're going to be employed in the next 6 months to a year, if artificial intelligence, for example, or blockchain, or some of this new emerging technology that's coming is threatening your position, I think that it's hard to obtain wealth in those situations as well.
And I think it's multiple good sources of income, right? Not just a single source.
Good point. Talisha, you have anything else?
I would say also that you have to, going back to the original question, the assessment of what does success and wealth mean to you, and then you retrofit those kind of things. So again, if money isn't if you need just a 6-figure job, then there's a whole bunch of those out there, and there's a whole bunch of ways to do that. There's not just one way anymore to do this. And I think this is where the generational aspect, where most of us were taught to get a good job, which meant get a good job with benefits and work it until you retire. Mm-hmm. That is not the reality for most of us, if not all of us at this point. That's never going to happen anymore. You may not even have Social Security come 3 years from now.
That's true. That is the truth.
These premises that we were given and told, like, this is like the gospel of, just get a good job and work. That is not going to work. And you got to take that out. And I think people really are still striving for those and looking for those, like, oh, if I could just maneuver into this job or that, or just get my 401k to this. That's not going to be sufficient. You are going to have to go out of that box. And that's where I think the uncomfortableness is because you're doing something that you've not ever done before, and there's no one to tell you. And the people who are advising you are telling you something that doesn't work anymore. Yeah. So this is where I think we are navigating some new areas, but this is where we have to be very proactive. And that's another aspect of how do you set the target? You set it for yourself by being proactive. You don't let it just be an arbitrary default. You say, this is what I want, and that's the goal that you have, and therefore it doesn't move because it's with you. And then if you want to move it, you have the ability to be much more agile and flexible with how you're going to maneuver towards your goal.
Yeah. So a few comments in the chat. I love the comments, first of all. So Tawana is saying here, what about the trade schools for plumbers, electricians, and truck drivers when you own your own trucks, not to mention entrepreneurship? These are all jobs that don't require a college degree. Absolutely. I'm a huge fan that those jobs are not going anywhere.
And I think we should take it a step further and sponsor our children to take those jobs. I tried to get my family to do it years ago. You'd always hear about you can't trust a mechanic. And I tried to suggest, let's pay for somebody to go to mechanical, be a mechanic, go to school. Then that way we always have someone we can trust, right? Mm-hmm. And, nobody wanted to buy it. It kind of was one of those ideas that fell on deaf ears. But I feel like we as a family need to start funding our families to build the things that we ultimately need to keep it in the community, right? Our own little community, keep it there. And we always have it. Plumbers, painters, construct, people who can build the house, right? We remodel homes all the time. And a lot of times we have to go outside of the community to get those services because no one really knows how to do it. If we funded the family members, that little cousin you have that doesn't know what he wants to do yet in life, send them to trade school. Family pays for it, and let's see what happens.
So I'm going to say maybe if the cousin has an extreme interest in that, and what I might do is put a little caveat on it of, look, you take out the loans, and if you stick with it for a year, then we'll pay your loans off.
I wouldn't put them in debt, Cherie. That's the whole point.
The only reason I say that is because so this is what I heard, but I heard it from a reliable source. There was a gentleman in Texas who was paying for young Black men to go to trucking school, and it was a 21-day school, and the gentlemen were dropping out. The young men were dropping out 17 days into the 21-day class. So that would be my only thing with sponsoring someone, unless like they've got real stick-to-itiveness. That would be my only concern. But I look, every family knows like their members, their family members. So, Ricky also said something here I wanted to read. I let my son, who is a financial rep with the brokerage, handle $60,000 for my retirement funds. He quickly increased it, investing in Tesla and some other stocks he researched. He made enough where I am paying off some of my children's student loans. The stock market has been a blessing, removing student loan debt from my children. Congratulations to you, Ricky. That is great.
Right. And to your son.
So if you want to send me an email, info@the10kproject.com, I would love to interview your son, please. If he's willing, So, alrighty then. So here Camari is talking about the paradigm shift that needs to happen. Otherwise, these issues will continue to occur in the community. So here are the top 15 issues from Camari's experience that Black America must tackle in order to close the wealth gap. Number one is to develop an abundance mindset. During slavery, many of our African ancestors were able to buy their freedom for their slave masters. This wasn't a quick process, nor were they lucky. They planned and strategized while remaining focused on their goal of freedom. Their focus had to be rooted in the possibility of freedom despite their current condition. I attribute this to their rejection of a mindset of poverty and hopelessness and adoption of a mindset of abundance. Our focus must be centered on positivity and abundance. When you expect bad things tend to happen. And when you expect great things usually happen. It might sound a little wishy-washy, but I find it to be true. And the wealthy individuals that I know tend to believe the same. So Tawana and Talisha, you guys can stop me when you hear something that you like. Number two, legacy mindset. We stand on the shoulder of giants. Many of us benefit directly or indirectly from the work that lived before us. A great example of this is the civil rights movement. People from Medgar Evers, Thurgood Marshall, Rosa Parks, and Martin Luther King all sacrificed so the present day generations could have a better standard of living. Proverbs 13:22 says, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous." Clearly, the civil rights era fulfilled the mandate of Proverbs 13:22. We must do the same when it comes to passing wealth to future generations. A shift must occur from solely me thinking to we thinking. We must also shift our thinking from a short-term focus to being long-term oriented. The greatest gains always occur from long-range thinking. However, this is a very counterintuitive process. You can look at the works of Benjamin Franklin, who set $1,000 aside for the cities of Philadelphia and Boston at the time of his death in 1790. This money was held in trust for over 200 years. In 1993, that initial $1,000 gift grew to $2.25 million and $5 million for Philadelphia and Boston, respectively. That is the power of compound interest at work. What would happen if a Black family did the same thing? So I think there's a little bit of what you were talking about, Tawana.
Yeah, and this is, when you read that, the passing on wealth, it made me think about what I think my parents were trying to do, but it's about giving the right message, right? We've heard many of our parents say, I just want my children to have a better life than I did, right? And what that translated to was, kind of make things easier for them, give them the things they didn't have, give them, buy them things. And really what they were trying to strive for is passing on that wealth. And I think we have to be clear in the messages that we give so that there's no mistaking what things mean. I don't just want my child to have a better life than I had. I want him to live a wealthy life and pass that on to then his children and his grandchildren. And so I've got to do my part in that mission. Now, had I known that 40 years ago, that'd have been a lot of less Jordans we'd have had, right? a lot of less foolishness we'd have spent our money on so that we would have some of that wealth to show for it. But what I'm learning is we have to be clear in what we're trying to say and really, really explain what the goal and the mission is, right? What the target is.
think again, we do ourselves a disservice by, I think we're counterproductive in aspects. I know that's what some parents say, yes, I want my children to have a better life, but then at 18, they kick them out of the house. So you don't set
Yeah.
them up for success if you're doing, as I said, we have these counterproductive things that we do. And you're like, well, struggle is good. That's how I made it. It's not. Struggle is not necessary for you to make it. We have used that justification in order to just make ourselves, I think it's self-soothing, but struggle is not the requirement. The requirement is having the resources and to fulfill. That's really all that we are. So we need to really backtrack of not only what we say, but what we do, and make sure they're congruent and they have an end goal in mind.
Yeah, that's a very
Yeah.
good point. That's a wonderful point. I think I don't want to get too deep here, but that to some extent that slave mentality kicks in where we feel like we gotta beat them strong, right? Right.
Yeah.
If you're not strong, you can't endure the world. I say we can be a little more compassionate and help them along. My mother did something amazing for me. So my situation is very unique in that my dad was much older than my mom, and so he retired first. She wasn't ready for retirement, but she went to follow her man, right? So, so she retired early to be with her boo. And so I wasn't ready. We lived in New York, and my dad was from West Virginia and always wanted to go back to West Virginia when he retired. And so he made that decision. My mom went with him, and I stayed in the city. And we had a condo at the time. And my mother said, "You can stay here, but you got to pay me rent." And I paid her rent. First of all, I was still scared of my mother, right? I'm 51 years old, and she is the only person in this world I'm afraid of. Uh, and so when Flo said, "You got to pay me this amount of money every month, you make sure you do whatever you have to do to pay Flo her money." And so I did. And it wasn't always easy. I was young. I was a young parent, and it was not always easy to do. And at the end of the year, after paying her straight, I think I was late once. And I was never late again after that. After the verbal thrashing I received, had she been closer, I think I'd have got a whooping, even though I was grown. But at the end of the year, she gave it all back. Yeah. And what she said to me was, "I just wanted to see if you would do it." And so what it taught me was responsibility. But she helped me, right? She didn't kick me out, make me get my own place, sell the condo, because she could have got a lot more money than I paid her, right? For that year, for sure. And it was gentle. It was gentle love. And my mother is not a gentle lover. She is a, you got to feel the pain, right? And be strong, because this world's going to eat you alive and you don't want it to do that. She had girls too. And so, but in that moment, she had compassion. And I learned a better lesson from that compassion than any whooping I ever got. Exactly. I mean, that was the lesson I took with me through my life, and it has served me well. And so I think we have to be different, like you said. We have to do things a little different.
Well, you see different things. Like I said, I am decades older than my siblings. My mother and I are literally 17 years apart. So I always tell my siblings I grew up with the ninja, and they grew up with a mother. So the difference is I literally graduated June 5th of 1990, left the house 4 days later, never to return. Both my brother and sister, who are literally 14 and 18, and one is 24 years younger than me, all lived at home, all went to college and stayed at the house. My sister is a homeowner. My brother has no debt. I am the only one that has struggled. That is the difference, and you get to see it. It magnifies itself very much clear. And my mother said, "Well, I did what I had to do." And that's true. You only can do what you can do, but you see the residual results. So like I said, this is, if you wanted to see it in vocational real life experimentation, we have, just like I said, just the little bits of difference between us truly shows the difference of the monetary aspects, some of the assets we have, how we even approach. My brother is in a PhD program right now, debt-free.
Wow.
I'm sitting here with a master's about to pay my student loan, plus a student loan coming up for somebody who's turning 18 in a month. Mm-hmm. So that's the difference. And it does have a really hard effect. And I think that's what we have to do better. We just really do.
And I think you bring up a good point, Talisha, in that we can learn from each other's stories as well. And we can learn, okay, I do think a part of it, though, is knowing your children And Capri asked a great question. How do we motivate our next generation to do more than wanting to play ball or rap? We don't have too many children who have hustle. I disagree with that. I
totally
think
disagree.
that the kids today are motivated by different things. Now, some kids, yes, they only want to play ball or rap. Yes, we understand that. But there are other kids out there who are starting businesses. There are other kids who are out there who are technically inclined, who are doing all sorts of amazing things. I think one of the things that I would add to this is sometimes you have to know your kids and you have to know what lights them up and what gets them moving. When I was 18 years old, I went to stay with my father one summer, and I was having a really, really hard time getting a job, like a summer job. And one day I was sitting on the couch and he's like, my father was a military policeman in the Army for a while. So you can imagine that stern military voice. Get up and get a job. Let me tell you, 2 days later, Sheree was working. And sometimes it does take knowing your child and knowing that your child needs to stern, like, get up now. I wasn't kicked out of the house or anything, but but I knew he meant business, just like Tawana's mother meant business. And sometimes you need that. And then other times your kids will say, they're not going to do nothing. They're not going to, they really not.
Question. I mean, I don't think this is, again, we're coming from a generation where they say, children are to be seen and not heard. That premise gets you into a point, you keep pushing them and then they don't tell you anything. Why should they? You're not listening to them. If you ask them questions, you will find out a whole host of things. My child, I've always asked her a question, like, what do you like? What are you interested in? How does that work? What do you want to do with it? Her first job, like I said, she's a Twitch affiliate. My daughter streams video games. She plays video games and earns money. Now, where they do that at, I did not know, because I would have been all over that had it been my reality. But that's her reality. So again, being astute, I asked her what she was doing, how did she do it? And some of this is her. She was very proactive. She's just like, I need you to help me fill out this W-9 form. And I was like, what are you doing? What do you need a W-9 for? She's like, they asked me for it. So there are certain things I think we do our children a disservice by telling them what we think they're supposed to do and telling them all you want to do is rap and now you don't have hustle. They're not supposed to hustle. They're supposed to find out things that they want to do, explore, and then do test and learn. This is where, again, the languaging that we're giving our children is defeating them. Why would you want to do something when somebody already told you you're not good at it and you're not going to succeed?
Yeah.
Nobody wants
That's a very good point. And the other thing is, we want to be what we see, right? So we have to also expose our children to other professions. I didn't know that being a quantum physicist was a thing, right? So when you tell me that's a thing, maybe now I'm interested in that. So we have to expose them to different things and different professions so that they can test and learn, right? When Talisha was talking about those lessons that I know I received, get a good job, work there forever and retire and, then travel. What I thought of when you were saying that was, if we only listen to young people now, because the rules are changed, right? And so now our parents' advice is not the advice we need to be listening to. It is truly the younger generation that we need to be listening to, because I think they hustle more than anybody.
Well,
they understand the multiple streams of income young.
All they have to do is find it. That's what I'm saying. Like before, it wasn't even a possibility. So you didn't think about, like I can travel. Now you can travel in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. Now you got to figure out how to do it.
Now you can travel and get paid.
Right? Now you can write a blog about how to get there and film it on YouTube and do a TikTok video and get paid. So that's what I'm saying. They know how to leverage it.
They know how to do it.
They know.
I agree. And they know those careers that are, I think about the little boy who does toy reviews, right? I think last I read, he was worth like $11 million. I think he was like 9 or some foolish shit like that. Mm-hmm. And I know there's, controversy over this, but what is it? The ASMR people who they just eat the sound stuff. They're making money. I think one lady, she does crab legs. She makes like $7 million last year. There's money to be made in this country. I think we just have to learn the new rules. We're sitting at old-timey rules because old-timey people taught us. We need to listen to people who know the new rules.
Mm-hmm.
Or just try it. That's what I said. I think everybody, this is where we have to get away from, it's a linear path. It isn't. There are tangential ways to get to anywhere you want to go. You just have to define where you want to go. That's what happens, is like, just do this. We've been doing this and that's not working. And it's never going to work ever again. You're going to have to set that path. And that's really daunting. If somebody said to you, do whatever you want to do, that at this point in time in the world, that would be a crazy, daunting experience. Because I'm saying you could just do anything, and without direction and without somebody saying, okay, let's have a conversation. That's also, I think it's just a really overwhelming sensibility, because like I said, everything is a click away. And with that, what do you do? How do you ascertain what is, oh, I like it, but do I want to do that forever? Or where do I want to do it here? You have so many choices. And so I think we've gone, again, from a polarized where you had minimal choice to now over exasperating choices. And that leaves you with that not knowing what to do with yourself.
Well, here's what I know to be true. I'm 51 years old. I've worked for the same company. This year will be 24 years. I want generational wealth and I don't have it yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have it yet. I know I have to do something different than what I've been doing. Correct. So we have to unlearn some things, right? Now, I may not know what I need to do yet, but I know what's not working, right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't have wealth for my grandchildren and my grandchildren's grandchildren yet. And I'm running out of time, right? Probably got another good 25 years to really make an impact on this world, right? Yeah. Before I get too slow to do anything or to care about anything, right?
So you just want to sit down and relax.
As long as you can type them fingers.
So we have to unlearn and relearn. The willingness to unlearn what you think you know and learn something new from the oddest places, right? And I call on the young people. I really do, because I think they've got a plan for the future. And I feel better knowing that I'm in the hands of the generation we have. You know, we all growing up, you heard, the children of the future. The children that are growing up now, those millennials, they got it together from my perspective. They really, really do. Every time I read an article about them, I am in awe of their fearlessness at such a young age, their creativity, their innovativeness. They immediately blow me away when I hear articles about entrepreneurial spirit that they have. They're doing so many great things. I think that's where we need to lean. I really, really do.
Yeah. So Jaquan said something very interesting that I would love us to tackle. I think we're highly influenced by what we consume. One of my biggest concerns is the music that our kids and even us as adults consume. So I wanted to talk about this because I think that this is interesting. I am a person that consumes a lot of different things. So in the course of an afternoon, I will consume, first of all, I'm a big fan of YouTube. I will admit, I'm a YouTube person, like fan, right? And you can find anything on YouTube I learned how to cut an avocado on YouTube. Like that's like how, like, you know how all those little things, you're like, how do I do that? And you're like, I can go to YouTube and someone has a video on like how to really cut an avocado. Like that's me, right? But in the course of an afternoon, I will watch a Cardi B, video, because everyone's talking about the one that came out like a month ago or whatever time frame. And then I'll also watch something that's super intellectual on the other side. I'm going to, sometimes suggest that maybe what we do, and this goes back to what Talisha says, is, hey, everybody, come to the table with, something to teach the entire family, right? Because one of the things I learned from being a salesperson in my own business is that the best salespeople are the best teachers. And if your kids are able to teach you something about a new career that they found, like, tell me about this career. What do you have to study in order to get into that career, or in order to do that? And how much do people money make? How much money do people make in all of those things? That those could be the types of things that engage, and it could get our young people to consume different things. Again, with what Talisha's saying, when we're asking them to bring something different to the table, because it gets them to think as well. How do I present this information? Because I do think one thing that we have to be cognizant of is we don't just want our kids to, do the elementary things. We want them to be able to think and to problem solve as well, because they need to prepare for 50 years from now for things that we could not prepare them for today because they don't even exist.
Yeah, and I do think the music. Okay, so I love music. I'll start with that, and I love all music, and I grew up with music in my household because my dad loved music, and so my son now loves music because that was our thing, and we didn't just listen to one kind of music, right? So it's the exposure. It's the same thing about showing them different professions. Show them all the different types of music. Now, the joke in my house is you don't want to put on my playlist because you it's like schizophrenic, right? So there'll be some Miles Davis, then there'll be some Biggie, then Yolanda Adams will come in praising Jesus, and then we back on Little Kim.
The block. Now I'm praising Jesus.
So the joke in my house is don't put Tawana's playlist on because she's schizophrenic. But I am all of those things, right? I got Lil Kim in me, I got Lil Biggie in me, and then I love Jesus. So, but that exposure to all of the different music genres that's molded my son, who is a musician, and in his music, you hear those undertones and those other influences, right? And so if they only hear one thing, there'll only be one thing. If they only see one thing, there'll only be one thing. Exposure. We have to get them sometimes out of the neighborhood, right? And that's whatever neighborhood you live in, right? Even for those who may have moved to good neighborhoods, get them out of that one. Take them to the hood, right? So expose them to the world so that they can understand what all of their options are, not just their limited options. And I think that's why sometimes the music has such an effect, and sometimes negative, because that's all they're listening to. They want some jazz and soothe their soul, put a little blues on so they can understand the real struggle of the people, and then throw the rap on.
I think it's an eclectic mix. You can't, this is just with education of any kind, food, music, world experience. It is the compare and contrast that teaches you something. It's not the myopic view. My daughter has been in gymnastics for 15 years. So she'll be 18 next month. So for her, music, everything revolves around her floor routine. That's what she has to have, floor music. So we got to pick out. I mean, there are some times where she's watching the Olympics. I'm like, why did you have this little Celtic music on? I think I'm going to use that for I'm like, you're not Celtic, sweetheart. I don't.
It's okay.
How to explain this to, because, she wanted a quinceañera too. I had to explain heritage to the Nigerian Jamaican child. That's also what happens. They get confused when they expose a little bit much. I was like, you can't have a quinceañera because you're not Latin. I'm just here to share it with you. And those are those kind of things, but it's just what they're using it for sometimes. Also, if it's just pure entertainment and that's what they're getting, we all look for that. We all look for that instant hit. And if that's the music that they're listening to that makes that instant connection, that's it. But there's a whole host of things that it serves. And I think that's what we're looking at what serves the child, not just in that moment, but just in everything that they do and how they maneuver. My daughter has gone from very slow, methodical music to the Black Panther tribute to, to her own, national anthem for Jamaica. So that's all that has to happen in a very small amount of time. I just think, again, we have to ask them why and what, and give them other options, because they know what they know.
And then you have to talk about it too. Yeah. You have to talk about it. Sometimes talk about what the music is they're hearing. Because I never believed in censoring music, but I can remember when, I forget whose album it was that came out, but I remember sitting my son down and actually talking about the lyrics. And, I remember hearing it. No, actually he bought the CD and I remember hearing it in my room through the wall and was like, what's he listening to, right? And I instead of going in there and taking it, throwing the CD out the window, right? Like that was an option, but I didn't choose that option. I decided to let's sit and talk and listen together. Let's talk about what they're saying and what that means. And I remember it was awkward for him. And he was like, this is just lame. She just took the fun out of listening to this, right? But there was a lesson out of it. And now he gets to analyze music, right? And you started to see him listening to the words and not just to the hot beat, because the words matter. And so that love of music started, and it wasn't just something that was popular and playing. I think we have to allow them to learn and to to be, like Cherie said, be analytical, right? Teach them that they get to question things. They get to be confused about things, but let's talk about it. And because they're still children, right? At the end of the day, they're still young people who are molded and need to be molded and have so many things going on in their head. Let's help them through that so that we can help them process and make good options and make good choices.
Yeah, I agree with that because, it's not just the music, it's the video games, it's the movies, things like that. And people do need to have a realistic understanding of what's fiction, and what we can get away with in real life, especially if you have sons,
Again, girls
and
play video games just as much. So yeah, you have to really, again, look at things and have a conversation. It's just not sit them and forget them. Like again, sitting them in front of the television, sitting them in front of that console is the same kind of thing. There's a whole lot of information. My daughter is LoJack to me in every device in my house because I know what she's doing. So I do have, like I said, she's a gamer. So she gets solicited a lot. She plays very heavily male-dominated games. She is one of the only young girls there. So she's doing it internationally. So there are people who I'm like, why is this person speaking Polish to you? She's like, oh, he lives there. And I'm like, okay, I just need to know who this gentleman is that's speaking to you. So there's still, I think, again, you just can't let them go free range. But again, I let her have those conversations because now she is talking to somebody in Poland. And I'm like, I don't know what that word is. And I'm like, Alexa, please tell me what that translates. That's what has to happen. But again, you have to really know your child, know the purview, and also work within those confines. I think that's what I'm saying. We can't be overly rigid, like you can't be exposed, but then have the expectation that they should know, because that doesn't work.
Right. And I do think what you're saying about the person in Poland, it just shows how global the world is now. And when we grew up, it was very much like national, like you were just competing with the people in your city, you know.
Exactly.
Maybe every once in a while, somebody,
maybe your region.
That's what I'm saying. Like, California was way over there if you lived on the East Coast.
And
like,
now it doesn't matter. The person could be in India, and you're going up against that person for a valuable position. So how do you set yourself up apart versus others? And this goes back to the whole income thing within the article. If you don't have steady sources of income, first world income, because we still live in a first world, how are you able to get security? And if you don't have security, it's hard to build wealth if you don't have security. So, those are the types of conversations that we not only need to have with the kids, but have with each other as well. If you're 40 years old and you're in certain industries, let me tell you, by age 50, you may be out of some of these roles because of emerging technology. Hint, hint, some of you may need to come to the 7:30 class that we're doing with Barbara to learn what's coming down the pipeline. So you can say, oh goodness, I've got 10 years to figure out what I'm going to do. And, people say that ageism is real within the workplace. So if you're going to be 50 years old and forced out of your job because artificial technology is coming in, you better have a plan. Otherwise all the wealth
I think that's also, don't be fearful of technology, but see how you can leverage it. Where do you fit within it? Because you have to parallel technology. Technology is not going to be a one, like again, it's not going to be remove you from it. You're going to have to work and now kind of orbit around it. You need to figure that out now. These are the time and the best time to ask those questions. Of when people are having those, like, how do we structure our organization? You could be that person to lead that conversation, and you just ensure that you have a job because you're going to craft that conversation to ensure that this is where you show your value to the company. So I think that's also because tech changes all the time. I've been in tech for 20 years and I can say I've learned things that don't even exist anymore. Like they are truly irrelevant, but then I have to constantly reskill. And I think that's one of the perks of being in the tech industry is I've had to reskill much more than I think other people have in their industries because things stay the same. Like, oh, we always do it this way. I'm unfortunate. I can't do that. I have to move and groove with new technology because I'm that person who has to say, does it work? How does it work? Was that new iPhone? Does it work on there? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have it. So I had to keep abreast of those kind of things. And I think that's now we have a great opportunity to have those conversations because they're happening now. They're not going to be forced upon you. You have to really be proactive. Again, making sure you're asking the right questions, asking the different people, even the young people, like, how does that work? Why do you use it that way? Because they're digital natives. It makes sense to them. And now we're building products for them. You're not building products for you. So if you're talking to people who are using it because it's like, but why do you like it that way? They're going to give you that insight so that you can make those decisions for your company. As I said, 12-year-old girls are the best R&D. If you have those people in your household, you need to ask them every question and follow them around. Like, you just want to sniff them. Like, what are you doing? Why do you do it that way? What's that? What's that? Why did you change that color? They are the people that everybody is looking for. They're the target market that most individuals who are using the internet want to know why and how they're using technology. So if you have babies, grandbabies, somebody in that house, those girls are going to give you R&D information that is priceless right now.
Yeah. And if not, YouTube University always works.
Always, yeah.
And also
or Professor
10K
Google.
Yes, Professor Google, exactly. And also the 10K project. We are focusing on bringing some people here to talk about different types of careers that are out there. You know, how are they transitioning in their 30s, 40s, 50s, et cetera. You know, you may want to bring your kids or your grandkids to some of the topics that we're going to be having over the next few months. So definitely keeping up with those options as well. So obviously we didn't have a chance to get through the entire article because this is what happens when we start talking, we just start talking. But I thought it was a very worthwhile conversation. And what I'd like to do is pick it up. We'll see when our next opening is, and I'll ask Tawana and Talisha if they're available. And if so, we'll pick it up from part 3, which is talking about financial literacy and money courses and things like that, and some of the actionable things that we can do. So
I'd love to ask Camari if he feels the same about the article 5 years later.
That would be great. I'll ask
way?
Camari if he's able to come as well, because he'll give a different perspective. So I'd love for everyone to put in the chat right now, and I'm also on Facebook looking, what was one thing that you learned or thought about or discovered or just kind of hit you again this evening as we were talking? Because we went off on a couple of tangents. We learned that Tawana's playlist is still in kind of the R&B space. Like, you get mine.
Oh, no. There's country, there's heavy metal. I have everything. I don't have everything. I have everything.
I like a little bit of everything. The only thing I don't really listen to is a lot of like slow country music.
I love country music, but I love music, right? So you can put anything on, and we'll be in the elevator music. We'll be in the grocery store or something, and I'll start moving and be like, "Why are you dancing to this?" Because it's music.
So Shannon's saying, I learned that I need to start learning more about tech. Yeah, and that can take a lot of different forms too, Shannon. So definitely. George is saying you need to pick your goal, but now there are plenty of ways to get there, no longer a linear path. Mm-hmm. Very true. What else did people learn tonight? Sandrina saying, I'm with Tawana, I love music too. People always ask me, how do you know this song?
I call it musical Tourette's. If you can hear a snippet, remember that's like, I can name that tune. I can name that tune in 3 beats.
In
like,
3 notes.
Know what that is. And my daughter was like, that's that song. I'm like, no, that's the remake of the 1970 version. Yes, like that's how we play that game.
Ayana is saying in Facebook, no jazz. So no, we listen to jazz too.
Listen to jazz.
Gwendolyn is saying that the old wisdom of working a job 40 years is no longer valid, and we must be able to adapt to what is working now. Yes. That is the truth.
That's it.
That's something to unlearn.
Also having more than one source of income as well. Yes. Hopefully the 10K project will be a place where people can start up their side hustles or businesses or things like that, if that's what you want to do. Charles, we really need to prep for the future because this present day reality is swiftly wasting away. Ashton, it's okay to do something different in search of better results. Charles, got to keep some on the side. Maria, looking towards the young people to learn. I follow those that are geared towards young people. Perfect. Perfect. Well, I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight. And we will try to get Camari here as well the next time. And we'll probably only get through 2 more of the sections of this article, but
This is
it'll
an
be one of those ongoing things, an
Camari's
ongoing
article.
series. And I will also say that one of the ongoing series that will start probably later on in the year is the Family Wealth book. So if you are a member of 10K, we're going to pick a date and we're actually going to start it, and we'll just go through it slowly, like a couple of chapters at a time, and really delve into that. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here this evening. If you're a member, you want to come back on to hear Barbara Bickham. She'll be on at 7:30 talking about emerging tech, what's happening in different parts of emerging tech, and how you can build an investment portfolio around emerging tech. So thank you so much. Hope you all have a great evening,
Good
and
night.
we'll see you in a couple hours.